What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Move Better Mondays. Today we are talking about knee stability and the practical exercises I like to use when I'm trying to help my clients build up their knee stability. That's what we do here at Own Performance. We build on knee stability and we build it structurally from the ground up. Now, the first thing we're going to be doing when we start this whole process is understanding what needs to go on at the ground level, or what's going to be going on the ground. So I'm going to slide this bench back, place this down on the ground. We're gonna get a little bit of height here. So the first exercise we are gonna be working on today is the bridge. Now, I've spoken about this let me lie down because this is gonna kill my back if I keep doing this. Now, the first exercise we're gonna be talking about, as I mentioned before, is the bridge. The bridge is basically that fundamental exercise that I throw in with basically every single client. It's almost the exercise that I kind of go to just for everything. I feel like it's probably the one where everyone kind of loses out the most, and it's where everything really starts. So knee stability that I like to work on with my clients is always going to start on the ground so that we can understand how to control our body and then build it up. As I mentioned in the previous episode, I'm going to try to limit the amount of technical garbage that I talk about. Simply because I know you guys probably, if you haven't watched last episode, it's going to be linked up here. But if you had watched last week's episode, you'll know that it's a lot of technical stuff, and I wanted to get into more practical stuff to help you guys get better. So today we're going to be discussing it. I'm also going to be throwing in sets and reps and all that stuff into this workout. So quickly jumping into this now, the hip bridge. I will need one little piece of equipment. I'll be right back. Okay, so the first piece of equipment we're gonna need is a foam roller. You're probably wondering why on earth I need a foam roller to do a hip bridge. Well, it's essentially to make sure that we've got good proper knee alignment, and then we've also got a good and proper foot alignment. So to make sure that our body doesn't kind of get one but lose out on the other, or kind of do an exchange for foot alignment and get knee alignment, or vice versa, we use a foam roller and we pay very close attention to where our feet are on the ground. So now let's get right into the first exercise. So the hip bridge, basically when I'm using the foam roller, there are a couple of things that are gonna go on that I really wanna pay attention to. The first thing is gonna be that angle at the knee. Now when I start off, I don't wanna be too far and I don't wanna be too close. And the way to really get that and be aware of it is by using a mirror, but I'm going to be using the camera here, so I'm actually staring. I know I'm not staring right into the camera, sorry guys. I'm looking over here to make sure that my angles are on. Now, I'm very experienced with this exercise. I've been doing it for years, so for me, the ability to know where I am and where my foot is in space is very obvious for me because I am understanding of it. I've done it for so long, and once you get better with it, you won't need that mirror. But for argument's sake, I want to make sure that I'm referencing it properly, so I'm using my camera to tell what I'm doing. So when I look in the camera, I want to see a nice, almost just past 90 degrees, so a little bit tighter than 90 degrees, so probably a 70-degree angle right around here, probably 80. I don't know, whatever, don't quote me on that. And then from there, I'm going to be slapping a foam roller in between my knees. Now, what I want to do is I want to get an understanding of this, and I want to understand why I want that here. Now, there is stuff that happens at the groin level, so basically the adductors, which is the muscles on the inside of the thigh that link back to the pelvis, and there's a lot of stuff going on there. I'm not going to get too involved with it, but it does help with the hamstring activation of it. So I'm using it for that reason, as well as allowing myself to make sure that my knees don't flare out. What will happen is, generally speaking, when you have poor knee alignment, I'm going to have to prop out of this to talk to you guys about this. When you have poor knee alignment, one of the things that's going to happen is your foot will turn out if your knee is trying to stay straight. And then when you try to keep your foot straight, your knee's going to prop out or it's going to prop in. So to make sure that we get a good combination of the two and we get that almost that center point alignment, we're going to put that foam roller in between our legs. We're going to make sure our foot alignment is proper. From there, we're going to bridge up. So this is what that looks like. I'm going to get the foam roller between my knees, feet are flat. I'm making sure that my foot alignment is good by checking one side and then the other side. And from here, very simply contracting the core, keeping that TVA that we spoke about a couple of episodes ago, that tight TVA control. And then from here, bridging up, making sure that my hamstrings are going, my glute is firing, and from here I'm staying up and holding this position for about 10 to 30 seconds. If you're much more experienced, hold it for 30. If not, hold it for 10. It's totally fine. You can go up to 15. I don't know why I said 10 and 30. It's such a massive jump. Go 15 to 30. It makes more sense.
Then from 15 to 30 second hold, I'm gonna drop down and I'm gonna give myself basically 10 regular repetitions up and down. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to almost keep my body in this position to be aware of it and at the same time link it back to my core. So my feet understand it, now my core understands it. And what's happening with this is I'm essentially learning how to control my hip and keep it up by keeping my feet flat, keeping my knee alignment, and keeping my core on, which are all super vital to that knee stability factor, which I spoke about last episode, which all kind of ties into each other. Everything basically kind of feeds off each other. So we need to make sure that all the air is going to be gone with it and we get a nice understanding of how everything's moving and how everything is supposed to be functioning. So that is exercise number one. What you're going to want to do is this falls into a category of exercises. What I like telling my clients is I generally try to categorize things into two different categories. So because it's all fairly new and it's all fairly kind of novel, what you want to make sure is that you're doing this stuff repetitively enough. You're doing it often enough. So you're doing it every single day. When it becomes more, when we become a little bit more difficult with the exercises, when we start using more aggressive knee stability exercise, we start getting into the basics and the more meat and potato stuff, the stuff that we see all the time that should be a little bit more advanced in nature, but is generally always tossed in there as a very basic exercise. When we get to that point, these exercises are going to be the dailies, and then those exercises are going to be the off dailies. So it's basically the two categories, dailies and off dailies. Now, why we do that is simply because we don't want to overburden our bodies, but we want to keep something relatively something relatively repetitive in nature, and we're very consistent with it so we don't ever fall back into that poor habit that we developed that caused us to be here and caused us to not have solid knee stability. So exercise number one, you're going to want to do it every single day. Completely forgot. I went off on a tangent, forgot even to tell you guys what the whole point of it is. So exercise one is the hip bridge with the foam roller between the knees. So for that first exercise, you're going to want to do that 3 sets for 10 reps. 10 reps obviously with that first initial 15-second hold at the top. Once we've done that, the second exercise we're going to want to get in is going to be using an elastic. I don't have to go very far. I actually thought this one through and brought it really close. So right here, using this elastic, we want to activate that glute med, which is going to be stabilizing that knee. So basically, when we did the couple of episodes ago, what had happened was I used this elastic to do something called a crab walk. Now that crab walk exercise is such a fundamental exercise in my programs. I give to basically all my clients as a kind of an activation warm-up exercise, but that's more for someone who's really just trying to take care of that knee pain. Now, while that all of this stuff all kind of falls in together, I wanted to give someone who's watching out there who just wants a little bit of something to get rid of that knee pain and just kind of get back into running. They could use that and they don't really need to follow all through this. Even though this is probably going to be a more complete and just pure knee stability exercise kind of segment or series, this is more of a series that you can add to that complemented stuff that's going to talk about the foam rolling and the stretching and all that stuff that's specific for pain. This is more specific for knee stability. So when you're doing this exercise, the first thing we're going to do is a clamshell. Clamshells are super famous, super popular, not famous, super popular. I don't really know how that would be famous, but anyway, they're really popular. And they're very good for activating that glute med, which is, as I mentioned a couple of episodes ago, and I briefly mentioned it in this episode, is a great knee stability muscle, and you need it for knee stability. It's super important. So the way to get this all set up, you're gonna need to lie on your side. You're gonna wanna keep your body flat. So you wanna keep that completely flat alignment. You can put your arm up here to stabilize, put it out to the side. I don't really care. This is not in the shot anyway, so. From here, what we're going to be doing is maintaining this flat position, keeping that core completely solid, completely tight. The hip can't move. We want to make sure that what we're trying to do is teach the external rotators, the muscles that are in the butt here that are controlling that knee, that are going to allow it to open up and close and fall in and fall out, are actually able to function independently of our back. When we're trying to get knee stability, when we're trying to get knee control and control the knee from falling out or falling in, we need to make sure that our body's actually able to dissociate or separate those two movements. This can't be controlling this if it needs this as well. What I mean by that is if I'm trying to separate my knees and my hip has to dump backwards, that means that what I'm actually doing is creating a false external rotation, a false opening of my knee, and a false carry of my knee outwards, because it's actually just my back. It's repositioning itself And this leg is almost just lying flat on the ground, just kind of staying where it is. So what we're going to be looking for here is keeping that core stable and then just really separating those two movements and creating that separation solely from the hip by keeping the core tight. Make sense? Okay, so this is what we're going to be doing. It's basically just opening it up like this hip bridge exercise or like the previous hip bridge exercise, 15 to 30 seconds, and then we're dropping down and we're doing nice, about 10 repetitions, 10 nice repetitions, nice and smooth, nice and slow. And essentially what I want to do is I want to start feeling it in that glute med that's going to be right out here on the side. Now, if it's not firing and if you're struggling with it and you can't seem to get it to fire properly, just poke it. Poking it sends a signal down to that muscle and almost makes your brain kind of go, oh, something's there, something's working, and it sends that signal back and forth up and down to your brain and down to that muscle and actually gets you to fire and lead with it more. You'll almost feel that thing start kicking in at some point, especially after you've held it, and then start firing off repetitions. Once we've done that, flip over and get back to the other side, lying flat on the ground and going through that again as well, making sure that we're keeping that separation coming from the from the knee and the hip and not so much from the back, dumping open. You may even notice that as you move, it might be a slight shift. That slight shift is all it needs. Because remember, as we go from the ground up, each movement up here doesn't actually have to be as large. It'll have a huge impact by being very small. So a slight shift in the hip actually realigns and makes this now just straight, where we actually want it to be outwards and outside of that alignment. Being able to create overshooting alignments, so going past what we need, is going to allow us to fall right in that middle point very easily and actually be able to stabilize it. Because I don't really need all of this movement. I don't really need that separation. I only need to be there. But if I'm actually able to control it all the way out here, being able to sit in here is going to be very comfortable for me because I've almost overshot it. It's like when you try to tell someone, hey, can you play this solo on your guitar really? Am I kicking something? Yeah. If you can play your solo on your guitar really well, okay, that's great. You're going to be able to play it kind of well. But if you literally just overshoot it and are able to do things that are almost insanely harder, that first original solo that you were trying to work on is going to become that much easier to play and that much easier to do that it's almost going to be an afterthought. You're not really going to think about it. So if you're able to do these two exercises, these are very much the kind of starting point of knee stability. Getting the hamstring, getting the hip extension, which is so important in knee stability. We're going to use those two a lot. And then also getting in that knee control, the in and out of the knee. Once you're able to basically understand those, you're able to stand up. Let's start loading that leg in next week's episode and start really trying to generate a lot more knee stability. And this is where we're going to start going into that two-leg stuff like we did with the knee pain. So the crab walks, the basic half squat holds, those things that we're going to be using to then carry over to the third part, which is going to be single leg knee stability. So if you guys haven't subscribed yet, hit that subscribe button down below. Leave a comment. Let me know what you guys think. Leave me a little thumbs up. I appreciate that. Share this with your friends that are looking for knee stability, and I will see you guys next week.